All right, so today I'm extremely excited. I'm here with Fabrice, who is the CEO of Bands in Town. So Bands in Town has a music
Hi,
community of over,
Michael.
hey Fabrice. So there's over 50 million fans on Bands in Town, which is like, that's ridiculous. That's a lot of people. And basically, if you're in this industry, you've probably heard of Bands in Town. But basically, what they let you do is they let fans track their favorite artists, and so that when they're playing a show nearby, it's easy for the fans to know about it. Because I've heard about that before. It pains me to hear this when there are bands who play a show, and then like a week later, the fans are like, "Hey, you should come to New York." It's like we just played New York. Um, so it looks like my video froze for a second. But Fabrice, thank you so much for taking the time to be here today.
Michael, nice to meet you. I'm very happy to be with you today.
Awesome. So I'd love to start off by just hearing a little bit about your story and how you became the CEO of Bands in Town.
Well, I'm a tech and media entrepreneur. Created several companies. At some point, we actually with my partner Julian, we were launching and creating apps, and we realized that there was no equivalent to Fandango in the US to discover concerts. So we kind of started looking what was already going on, and we were, because we were live music fans, we really wanted to find a solution to our problem, personally mostly. And we did notice this app on Facebook called Bands in Town, actually, that had been created to help artists post their tour dates on Facebook. So we acquired the app, and the team joined us, and so we launched the mobile apps in end of 2011, 2012, and really that's what started the Bands in Town course. We focused mostly on mobile, and that's how the whole story started.
Wow. All right. So there's 50 million. Let me just kind of like recap. So there's 50 million music fans who are on there who are like, hey, like we love live music. We want to know when our favorite bands are coming nearby. And how many artists are using the platform?
Well, over 500,000 artists are registered on the platform.
Wow.
So we essentially connect, yes, indeed, about 50 million people and 500,000 artists. We do feature, as many dates as we can. So I was about to say 100%, probably not 100%, but we were really trying to get the largest catalog of tour dates. But we mostly help essentially artists and fan connect.
So there's one thing that we were talking about. My video will probably, it just came back. Cool. So there's one thing we were just talking about before we started the interview that really resonated, and I wanted to ask you about. Because you mentioned kind of like the ethos behind the business. You're talking about how it's fun. It's great to see like artists who are super successful who like have big fan bases and come in. But like part of your guys' passion is really helping like even artists who are a little bit smaller to kind of get started. So could you just give me a few lines about what kind of like drives you as a business? Like what's your core focus?
Well, we feel that we believe that actually live music is one of the last tribal experience. It's really an experience that connects us all in a very communal moment and probably provide more happiness and understanding to this world. So we feel that we're on a mission to help live music in general thrive, but mostly developing emerging artists to succeed, because the diversity of music is really directly related to the ability to let new artists, new music emerge, rather than only grow the existing artists, which obviously are key and important and which we are happy to support as well. So what keeps us really awake at night is really to help these artists grow and develop and meet their fan base and create bonds and sustainable relationship, long-time relationship with these concert goers, which in my opinion are obviously the most passionate music fans, the most engaged music fans. So they're also very demanding. And so we hope that we can provide tools to the artists to help them better relate and engage with this kind of fans.
Man, that's so fantastic. And I think you're right too in terms of like the tribal experience of like coming together and having this like amazing, almost transformative experience at like live shows. It's something that there's almost a little bit of a danger in terms of like social media and the way things have moved like digital, or there's a lot of bands who I think, well, not necessarily, but sometimes like we forget about that real like human connection and kind of like that contact and the presence of being with someone like live. Um, and I know like for our band with like 10 years of doing it professionally, like the things that really like I remember most are being on stage and playing a show to like, 400 people in a room and singing a song, and like everyone in the crowd singing the words back in unison and like crying, and just like, this emotional experience that it's hard to replicate, aside from that live presence. So that's really
Yeah.
cool that you allow that to happen.
Well, that's what is so special about live music, is that you at the time when all of us spend hours and always more time in front of these screens, be it our phone or computers, whatever. Going to a live show is one way to reconnect with the real life, and I think that the value of a live music experience actually is greater today than it was even 10 years ago and 20 years ago and so on, just because there are not as many opportunities to connect with others, to precisely experience this communal experience, but to go to a live music show. And they used to be different. It used to be that you could meet people maybe more socially and so on, but by the nature of the way we currently live and work, we are way more digital than we used to be. So we love to think that we're using a digital tool to kick people out of their home, meet other people, experience and support their favorite artists, enjoy the music, but also I think get a bit smarter, because when you spend a night with other people in a mosh pit, you probably are more tolerant. This is a place where it's fully equal, it's fully diverse. There's no income, there's no title, there's no background. We're just humans together cheering for music and the artists, and that's I think this is very unique in this world.
Man, I love it. So okay, in terms of independent musicians who are at that level where maybe they haven't quite like broken out yet, or they haven't made it like sustainable yet, and they're just starting to move towards that, what are some of the biggest like challenges or mistakes that you see those people facing?
Well, it's being a small musician or a new band, to me is very close to something that I know very well, which is to create a startup. You're by nature an artist, but also an entrepreneur, and so there are a lot of similarities to the initial hurdles that you have to overcome. And precisely, it's all about creating a brand. First, finding who you are. What do you want to bring to this world? What's the message? What's the positioning? And how will you create the brand? Which, for people who never did it, can be done by nature, but it's very complex. So that's the starting point, and then making this positioning very sustainable. In other words, making the music and the style that you decided to dominate, or at least to play, a sustainable style over time. Trying to grow your brand through your online presence and social networks in a consistent manner, and not just posting and throwing stuff out there. Trying to also build a story on, again, what you want to bring as a message, and not only just be playing and enjoy that, which is great, but it's probably not enough to break through. So that's the very initial phase of the launch phase of a new band is key. I think is critical to create. It's just like a tree. You want to create the right roots for the tree to grow and always get stronger without having the risk of being, of losing its roots in a way. And that's a challenge. Obviously you're tempted to go fast, to not to pay too much attention to these things, just focus on the music. And then there's a whole dimension which relates to more the entrepreneurship side of it, which is how do you build the right contracts? Do you keep your own rights? From a leadership standpoint, it's hard to lead a band. If you're by yourself, that's fine. But if you're part of a band, a lot of issues come from the relationship of the band members, right? And some bands break just because they don't get along anymore. So it takes leadership skills to also be successful. And so, if you don't have them, then it's important to get the right mentorship, to surround you with people who can be friends, family, experts, but who can bring the skills that you potentially are missing.
Man, that's fantastic. So you mentioned that it looks like my video might have frozen again. So we're just going to look at a picture of me and my wife when that happens.
That's okay.
So you mentioned like it's really important starting out kind of in this like startup phase where you're launching to make sure that you're building on the right foundation, make sure that you have kind of like the roots in place. And when you said that, it kind of brought to mind this idea of like wanting, like if you plant a tree, wanting it to grow like fast, like no matter like how quickly like you're like grow fast. It's like, well, sometimes you gotta plant it and nurture it and like it grows naturally. But in terms of that specific challenge, so like getting started and finding like a brand and finding a message that really like resonates with you, that you align with, what would be some like tips for people to do that? One of the challenges I think some people face is not knowing like if something is artificial versus like real. There's kind of this this balance that they're struggling with where they're like, they don't want to sell out, or like do something like fake, but at the same time they need to do something that's marketable and that like can be successful. So how would you kind of approach that process of like getting started and building your brand as a band or an artist?
Well, whether you're an existing artist or band or you're just starting, the best way is, the best way, there are many ways, but you would try to do a real exercise of almost pinboarding who you are from, think about keywords, images, whatever you want to pinboard. And you can use Pinterest for that, actually, which, lots of bands are using. But that's a way to first create the environment. You can pinboard music, you can pinboard videos. That doesn't matter, because at some point you'll be surprised, and ask friends and whoever knows you to do the same, so that you're not the only one who project yourself to something, but also other people would tell you something about you. And you should do that. Obviously, if it's a band, you should do that with each band members, right? And then once you've done that, then you can try to create or try to identify some commonalities. What brings the bands together? Which are, and from, just look at the image, the keywords and everything. And then you eliminate the noise. So you try to stripe out whatever is just creating noise and out of these commonalities. And there you are. Now you're in front of something that more or less describes who you are as a person, as a band, as a team. So out of that, you can start to build a brand, and you can build a persona that you'll be able to convey. Think about your color. It's not only the music, it's not only the style, it's also, and obviously who you're playing for. So at that point, there's a time when you have indeed to define what's your target audience and why. Is it because you feel very strongly involved in this kind of community? Is it because you feel very relevant from your lyrics standpoint? Is it because you feel this is a growing audience and you want to just address it? But at some point, there's a need to match that persona, who you are and who you want to be, and obviously the audience that you're targeting.
Mm. Interesting. So to start out with, you recommend, you call it like pin vaulting or
Pinboard,
pin
like
board?
a pinboard, like a board
Oh,
with
a pin, like pinball. Okay. And you recommend using like Pinterest even maybe to kind of help come up with some like different images and stuff. That's really cool. I'd never heard that before, but that seems like a really good idea. Um, so just getting clear on like, what are some of those, what are the brands, or what are the things visually that you resonate with? What are some of the favorite like artists? What's your kind of core story? And asking other people too, not just, coming up with it yourself.
yeah.
And then you've talked about clearing out the noise. I really like that. That seems like a step that not everyone, like people pass over that pretty easily. It reminds me of almost what you're doing with the brand is like you're creating like a chord where you're talking about like getting all the pins and like you have a chord, and then maybe like when you put everything on paper, it's like you're playing a few extra notes and you're kind of like, I don't know. And then you kind of like eliminate some of the noise so that you are just like focusing on the what resonates, like those different like harmonies. That's really cool.
I love the way you took it. I mean, it adds lots of value to what I said. But yeah, it's just absolutely. It's always easier to add stuff on the Pinterest than to take them out. So the process of adding them is obviously a very important one, but then it's harder in a way to give up onto some things. And it's what you just did shows that yes, it's not a linear process. It can be circular as well.
Mm. Yeah, another thing that just came to mind too is it's almost like an ice block chipping, where you can like kind of chip away like the extraneous noise to like make this beautiful figurine. My mind is just thinking in analogies right now, I guess.
No. I think it's perfect. It's good to use analogy to explain things.
So another thing you mentioned that I think is like really important is that ability, like once you kind of have your brand, figuring out who's going to resonate the most, who's going to get the most value out of it, like who are those people, like kind of who's your avatar. So for like a musician who is kind of just getting started and they have their sound, or they think something that sounds kind of unique, they've started to chip away, what are some of the best ways that they can start finding those people you think that are really going to resonate with their music?
I mean, in terms of fans and the audience?
Right.
The best way is there are several ways, and each artist is a different story. So it's hard to become too general. So everything will sound obvious, and sometimes too much repeated. But once you know who you are, it's always easier to communicate to the right audience, because then you can try to find digital ways. First of all, the way you're going to share and communicate on social networks will be consistent. So you'll start to attract people by granularity. They'll try to come and be they'll come by granularity. So that's the first way to do it. And then you'll be able to obviously use other means. For me, the obvious way is to start touring, one way or the other, even if it's in small clubs, small venues, small bars. That's the best way to confront yourself to the real world and to the fans. So how do they react to this song? How do they react to the band, to you, precisely to your interactions, your posts and everything, and grow step by step from there, right? That's one way. Others choose different ways. I mean, others choose to really focus only on the music and try to release as many songs as possible to be noticed and to generate interest by releasing music, right? And try to build a presence on the digital streaming services. So I don't think there's only one one scenario. I think the earlier you can get in front of an audience, the better it is, because that's the moment of truth. You feel the audience immediately, and
Mm,
and that helps improve as well. So
mm.
I'm still a big fan of playing live
Yeah.
as soon as you feel ready.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So it sounds like what you're saying is that there's a ton of different ways. Like it's hard to just kind of like generalize and say like, you know, this way is how you do it, or this way, because it's different for different people based on like the market. But in general, like one thing that you recommend is playing live, like as much as possible, and playing like going on tour, maybe even opening for like a bigger band in the right genre, because and one of the benefits of that is that you're going to have that instant feedback where you're really going to know exactly how something is landing. It's kind of like the moment of truth. Whereas
Yeah.
like online, sometimes there's a little bit of a disconnect. It's a little bit hard to have that instant feedback.
Oh yeah, and there's some people. I mean, people who just get online feedback are maybe very frustrated once they get on stage. Right? It's not the same feeling. It's not the same approach. You may have lots of likes on Facebook or followers on Instagram just because of who you look like, or because the what you post. That doesn't mean that the music sound right. So it's a different. I think it's complementary, obviously, and it needs to exist on. And these platforms, in a way, are part of one platform, precisely, or should be part of one platform, which is your brand platform. But the live platform in the digital platform cannot coexist without being related, and cannot exist by themselves. At some point you get to release music, you get to be on stage. Today, 80% of the artist revenues are coming from live music and merch. So no matter what, you're going to be on stage at some point.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really important. I feel like, because I mean, there are kind of pros and cons, I think, to like, if you're just starting out and instantly like you want to tour and like you book some like headlining shows and you're just like going out and you're playing for nobody and like just like the bartender in the back of the room, which I've done. Like we've been
Yeah,
there where we're like living out of our car playing for one person in the back of the room. So like, there are ways to kind of like, but even that was like, it's a learning experience. Like it was valuable, like learning, oh yeah, I guess if like we're going to play shows, it would be good to build some relationships first and get them to come out to the show so that we're not just playing for no one. Um, but I do really like your focus there about at some point like that live performance is where 80% of the revenue is right now for the music industry, and it's important to kind of dial in. So you might as well start doing that and start mastering that as soon as possible.
yeah, it's obviously scary, and that there's obviously pitfalls, but the fact that you've managed to bring enough friends to a show or go on stage is also a proof that at some point you managed to build or relates to a certain group of or certain community. So obviously most of the artists do that by bringing their friends and family, and that's how it starts. Some are starting out of college or a group of friends that help them start like this. But this feeling of being on stage is critical, I think.
Fantastic. Okay, so um, what are some other challenges that you notice musicians making when it comes to like maybe getting started? So maybe we could actually dive in a little bit here. You mentioned, and I've experienced this too, where it's like the feeling of getting on stage and performing can be like really scary, kind of, because you have to like allow yourself to be seen in a certain way and allow yourself to, maybe fall on your face and look stupid. Um, so could we speak a little bit about that, and maybe like what are some ways that someone can overcome that or can embrace that and like and do it anyways?
Well, it's a lot of preparation. It's a lot of hard work. That's not any different from any other type of uh, work, in a way. It's not it's definitely takes lots of discipline, preparation, and hard work to be ready. And then it's practice. I assume that once you start to, you're getting better and better by just practicing and doing it again. But that's yeah, it's also about being ready on all fronts, and not only be ready on the musical and lyrics side. It's also being ready on the precisely the social media aspects of it, and the way to announce it, and the way to also say thank you after the show or after the event. So that's not that, it's indeed a multifaceted project, which takes time to prepare.
Mm. Yeah, so that's a good point. So like, one thing that's going to help with the fear is like actually being ready and being prepared. It'll just make you feel better. Do you think, I mean, I feel like one thing that holds people back sometimes is almost like leaning to, because there's kind of that balance, right? Where it's like, you want to be prepared, but at the same time, like you have to be willing to like you realize it's never going to be perfect, or it's like, you're never going to like fully do it. So like, what about for people who are maybe leaning in that direction where it's like they have been pushing back their release for like 2 years, or like they're ready to get on stage? Like, I mean, I guess one thing that I would want to share from experience is like, for a lot of artists, like getting up and going on stage, I think that we're told that or at least we believe that we should try to calm ourselves down, or it should be like, all right, like take deep breaths and just like calm down. Like it's almost like we're resisting the way we're feeling. Like we shouldn't be feeling nervous or like excited. When it's like, that's just going to be the way it is. Like, especially your first time going up on stage and doing it, it's going to be really scary. So maybe like one tip would be to kind of just like embrace what you're feeling, and instead of seeing it as like nervousness, see it as like being excited. Like it's just like your body being like, yeah, like, this is what I should be doing. It's a little bit like scary, but it's good.
And no matter what, when you're watching it again several years after, you always feel that at that point, at that time, you were not performing at your best compared to what you became a few years later. So there's no reason to be overwhelmingly nervous, because it is what it is. The reality is that it takes a lot of courage to be an artist. And I have a great sentence around courage, which came from Churchill, if I'm not mistaken, which is that be courageous is not to have no fear, but it's to be to fear and continue. So it means that you experience fear, but you do it. And I think that's what it is to be courageous. And they do it again and again every time they go on stage. It's a challenge anyway. For some people, it's going to be a challenge for their entire life. It's going to be, well, no matter how successful they become. So that's part of the one of the challenge that artists have to overcome. There are so many others.
Right. Yeah, that's so awesome. I love that quote. So like, courage isn't the lack of fear, it's the taking action in spite of the fear. And yeah. There's another quote that I heard, I think it was like Brendan Burchard talks about how it's something along the lines of like, I hope your goals are big enough to freak you out a little bit, or it's like there's always like something that's going to be scary that's coming up that kind of requires you to step up. And if there wasn't, then your life would probably get pretty boring pretty fast.
You're not stretching yourself, for sure.
Right.
For sure.
So one question that I wanted to ask for you, being the CEO of Vans in Town, is how could someone like best leverage your platform, as they're kind of growing their fan base and they're starting? Because I mean, we were just talking about, because my band, we're playing a couple of shows in a few months from now, and he was like, look, like you have like 50 some thousand trackers. You realize that you can send out a message to all of those people. And it's not like Facebook. It's not like you're only going to see a filter, like a fraction, like it's going to be significantly more of those people. And I'm like, should have had a V8, like,
well, I'm glad we spoke.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, Yeah,
Yeah.
like what are some best ways they can utilize bands in town?
Yeah, so we do provide a full suite of tools and dashboard to the artist. We contribute value to the artist. We don't extract value from the artist. So the point is, all this suite is completely free. And so once you log in into the, so I can share the address now. It's manager.bandsintown.com.
Mm.
You create an account. You're going to claim your artist page. And once you do that, you have access to a whole that suite of tools. It's obviously enables you to post and publish your tour dates to not only on Bands in Town but on many platforms, because we have agreements with other platforms to provide them with tour dates. We have technical integration, so with Facebook, with Google. We're providing tour dates to Alexa from Amazon. It's Bands in Town and beyond Bands in Town that where those dates will be published. So that's for us. It's a way to provide the greatest level of awareness to all the artists that publish their tour dates. You can choose whether and when you want to publish your tour dates, so you can schedule, or you can ask us to publish them on your behalf when they are released. So that's the first set of tools. You can publish a bulk of tour dates. So if it's an entire tour, it's very easy to upload all the tour dates, and we'll adjust and add all the venue locations and the links. And then there are other set of tools. So first is, how do you make your tour dates available on your own platforms? So most artists have a website or a Facebook page or an Instagram account. And so without doing anything additional, we provide very easy tools to display these tour dates on your Facebook page, on your websites, and from your and post them on your stories by enabling the fans to swipe up. So 3 tools, very important, needs to be ready on the site, preferably before the tour announcement. So when people Google search, they end up on the website and they can immediately see the tour dates and buy the tickets. So at the end of the day, it's all about buying the tickets. If a date is canceled, it's very easy to cancel from the dashboard. It therefore change all the listings. So not only on Bands in Town, but again on your website, on your Instagram, on your Facebook page, on other platforms. So that's really a one-stop shop. You do it once and it changes everywhere. So that's the first thing. And then indeed what you just mentioned, we want you to interact with your fan base. We want you to grow your fan base on Bands in Town, just because these concert goers are the most likely to buy tickets from you and to go to your shows next time when you come in town. So the more followers you have on Bands in Town, the more people you'll be able to immediately alert when you come to town, the year after or after your show. But so we provide this free tool that enables you to post to fans, post to your followers. We call them trackers on the platforms. Indeed, you have more than 52,000 trackers, Michael, on this platform, and that's a lot. It already means that you are a significant artist. So you can post images, text, links to videos and stuff. And you can do it in your own style, in your own language. So if you want to post to Bands in Town fans in different manner than you would do on Instagram or you would do on Facebook, that's great, because you're taking into account that this must be your core fans, your super fans, and you need to be maybe a little bit more intimate, a bit nicer, not nicer, but find a different way to talk to them than just the fans that you may have on other platform, which may be music fans, but they may not go to your concerts. They may not show a clear intent to go to your concerts. And that's how we differentiate. We show intent. I mean, our fans definitely show intent to buy these tickets. And therefore, they are very valuable.
Man, that's so awesome. So basically, like Bands, it's just like a place that you can, it's like a hub. Like if you're going on tour, you put all the dates in there and it's going to distribute them everywhere that they need to go. So valuable. That's so great. And one thing that I wanted to follow up on, because I think it's really important, you mentioned this, the difference between how you might speak to people on Bands in Town versus like everyone else, and just in general, like your inner circle or your core super fans versus like other people. Because you wouldn't, I don't know, like you wouldn't send an email that you're talking to your grandma. Like you wouldn't talk to her the same way you would talk to a random stranger, or else it would just feel like really strange. You just wouldn't like connect. You haven't built that right relationship yet. So
But it's all about who you are. You can express by doing this type of post. You can definitely express yourself. If you do it, especially developing artists, emerging artists are usually controlling their own socials. It's not necessarily delegated to a team, or it's not. So it can be very authentic. It can be really yourself. That being said, it needs to be yourself, but again, always relating back to your brand, your DNA, and who you want to be. So that's, this is where you still have to be on check in a way. But that's an opportunity. Yes, it's an opportunity to think how you speak to your fans. What kind of you can launch sweepstakes, competitions. Promoting merch, album launch. I see artists testing tracks on Bands in Town. So, that's because the fans that are really on Bands in Town are usually your earlier fans. Because they if you go on tour before even being signed by a label, you really do a lot of live music. These will be your very the fans of your very early stage fans. They are very valuable. They are super important because they'll be there for you. I mean, hopefully for the rest of your career. And they are like key influencers, people that you really can activate, people that you should really try to, I don't know, have lunch or have a drink or whatever, really nurture as your initial fan base, which they'll help you socialize who you are. They'll help you announce your show as well when you come to town and so on. So they have an enormous amount of value going forward.
Mm. Yeah, man, that's so awesome. So basically, treat those people really special and give them the time of day and focus on building that relationship with them, because a lot of times those are the people that have the biggest connection with you, and they're the early supporters. They'll be with you for the rest of your career.
And I think it's true for big bands. I mean, there are a lot of big bands that very large artists who still do it. For the rest of their career, they will continue to entertain special relationship with these fans that they met, and who are there for them so early that it creates a lasting bond and which never going to go away.
That's actually reminds me of like probably looking back at our career, probably the number one thing that we ever did started with focusing on what you're talking about. And we actually used Bands in Town to track a lot of our favorite artists, a lot of our favorite bands, and see like their tours. And there were 6 of us in the band, so we split up into groups of 2, and we followed other bands' tours around the country, and basically like met the people who were standing in line for the shows, and just like introduced ourselves, shared some clips of our music, and sold 24,000 CDs doing that, like coming from scratch. And because of that, one of the bands that was touring, they were called All Time Low. They were like our favorite band of all time, millions of fans. They decided to bring us on tour with them. Mm-hmm. And so what we noticed too was like what you're saying with like the people who go out to shows, the people who are standing in the line are just like so, they're such the best kinds of fans, like, cause they're actually going out, they're waiting in line for a show. They support live music. Like music has really impacted them. so finding a way to build a relationship with those people, like you're saying, I think is a really valuable starting point for an independent artist who it's like,
But maybe
maybe,
it's very personal point, but sometimes I feel I sometimes ask myself, do you really love music or you love the musicians? In other words, I think it's a mix of both, right? But I think nowadays you interact and relate to the band and or the artist as much as you relate to the music.
mm,
And so artists needs to be aware of that and understand that, because at the end of it's also a people business in a way. It's not only it's obviously the music matters at the greatest level, but one shouldn't be neglected. I think you're working on two legs, if I may, and that's one is really the quality of the music, the lyrics, the performance, the artistic side of the obviously of the artist, but the other one is really the the the, the personality, the values, the style, everything that an artist convey as a message personally. And so with if you neglect one of these two legs, you'll definitely be unbalanced, I feel. And you don't know how people relate to an artist exactly, and so you have to bet on both sides. You have to really be dealing with both, and relationship matters. At the end of, at a concert, artists performing on stage are still facing humans. They are not facing robots. They are not facing machines.
as far as we know. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, so far, yes. So far, yes, exactly, and maybe, but that's what is interesting, and these humans are extremely sensitive to any form of attention that artists may share and may express, to any form of interest of who they are in the room, and that creates it. It's much more impactful, much more efficient to be kind to the audience, to say something special, to jump into the audience, to be there before, after, and so on. Then it's much more impactful than many posts on social media and many hours spent to create a music video, I believe.
Mm. So that's a really good point. That sometimes the things that take like a long time, like posting like 1,000 times on social media versus just like taking one time to like stage dive and for someone to like feel you like on their hands, um, can make in terms of leveraging like your time, um, it can be really valuable. All right, man. Well, this has been really fantastic. I feel like you are just like a brilliant thinker. Like the way you articulate some of these points is like really awesome. So
I'm just trying to be helpful, and that would be already a great win. But thank you for your kind words.
yeah. So Fabrice, once again, thank you so much for taking the time to be here today. And you mentioned bands in town signing up for the manager account. That's kind of the best way to get started. So what we'll do is we'll put a button below the video so that people can like click on that and get their account set up.
It's manager.bandsintown.com. And from there you can get access to the entire platform.
All right. So another thing that I wanted to ask you about is you guys just recently acquired a company called Hypebot, right?
Yes, we just a few weeks ago we announced that.
Awesome. And what's all included in Hypebot?
Well, Hypebot is really a very authentic platform, which comes actually also with another one called musicthinktank.com. So these two sites are helping what we call the new music industry. So all the marketing techniques, everything that we just talked about in a way, reviewed by a team of passionate music fans and music professionals, which are, day after day trying to help developing emerging artists, do-it-yourself artists, succeed in a very complex world. So that's what we do, and we thought that We acquired it because we will help, in fact, expand their reach and their audience. We believe what they do is great, but it's not. I mean, it could be shared more broadly. So we're going to help them find new audiences. It's mostly read by the music industry, and there's appealing content that can be shared among a greater set of musicians and artists. And then we hope we can also bring more content into our own platforms. So the Bands in Town Manager, for example, is indeed sharing weekly news and updates with artists and their managers. And so, obviously iPod will help us highlight more content.
Fantastic. So like, let's say that someone's watching this right now and they're interested in kind of like utilizing that platform. What's a good starting point for them?
Well, it really looks like an editorial site. So there are posts every day, and each post is usually focused on how to build a loyal fan base, or how to deal with music rights, because it's kind of complex environment. So that's so they can find news every day that helps them navigate this world, or they can also dig and find. I think there are more than 14,000 posts in the database. So I'm sure they can find articles that relate to their questions or their issues quite immediately.
Sweet. So I'm just gonna pull this up so everyone can see it.
Yeah,
So this is
exactly.
Hypebot right here.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so you do have lots of tips and advice coming from usually great professionals writing these posts, and that's it's a fascinating database of content, which is immediately actionable for developing artists.
Yeah, this is fantastic. And is there a way for someone to subscribe so they get like a daily like email, or should they just come back here like every day? Or
no, there's all you can follow on social networks, and there's an email list. Yes.
Oh, here it is right here. Sweet.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, everyone's gonna know my email address now.
Perfect.
Sweet. All right.
All right, Michael. It was a great journey. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you again for taking the time. This is a lot of fun.